Hi everybody. Just going to wait a couple of minutes here so that people start logging in, and we'll go. Okay. All right. So we're going to go live now. All right. So welcome, very, very, very welcome to this Facebook Live. Now, I know there's probably going to be a few people here who know that they have a fear they need to deal with, or know somebody who has fears that they are currently dealing with or need to deal with. Anyways, fear is a very interesting thing. So today we're going to be talking about what types of fears there are and how we are going to interrupt them. So before that, I'd like to welcome you all to this Facebook Live broadcast. And my name is Peter Jansen. I'm a coach. I've been doing this work for a little over 20 years. Now, tell you a little bit about myself. I've been coaching since a very, very early age. I got my NLP practitioner's certification when I was only 16. So it was 1992. So yeah, do the maths. After a while, what I really discovered is that my favorite subject was understanding human emotion, developing emotional intelligence, and so on. This is a fantastic thing. And to be honest, the key thing about emotional intelligence is that it's not developed enough in most individuals. Now think about it. About 80% of the decisions that we make using our emotions. Yeah, so they are emotional decisions. Now what happens with this? If 80% of the decisions we make are emotional, well, so too are 80% of our results, right? Yet we live in a world where they train us to do things through logical processes, which is only corresponds to about 20% of our decision making. This is kind of interesting because we're not exactly efficient. What I love to do is understand human emotion, to develop that emotional intelligence, and in doing so, getting that 80% activated. And that's the key thing. Activate that emotional intelligence so that you are able to reflect that in your results. So first off, what we're going to be learning here is we're going to be learning, number one, what types of fears there are. Number two, how we're going to be dealing with them. And the final thing we're going to be looking at is I'm going to be giving you a tool. And this tool will allow you to interrupt your fears very quickly. Now, I'm going to say this only once. This tool will not be available for free for very long. I'm not going to let that happen. And mainly because if you are watching this and you want to change the fear that you have, you want to abolish it, then you're going to be reading it real quick. And you're going to be activating yourself as soon as possible. So if I just leave it there and leave it there and leave it there, I know that you're just going to leave it for tomorrow, and that is not going to work. So I'm not going to leave it there for a very long time. This video is also going to come down. All right. So let's talk about emotions. What are emotions? Emotions are, simply put, non-filtered, reactive mental processes. Yeah, the thought is a mental process, but emotions are too. The key thing about emotions is that they're faster than thoughts. We're conditioned to feel certain emotions depending on what happens around us. So when you're a kid, sometimes what will happen is that you will burn your hand a couple of times before you realize, oh, that is hot. So through that feeling, that sensation, you realize that, oh, I'm not going to touch it. Eventually you learn. It's reaction formation. You react to the pain and you start forming a sequence of processes and decision-making processes that will allow you to survive. Emotions are exactly that as well. Yeah. Now, many years ago, Dr. Paul Ekman and eventually also Dr. David Matsumoto decided to dedicate their lives to the research of emotions, human emotions. Dr. Paul Ekman, created a system called FACS, Facial Action Coding System. Now, the facial action coding system is very interesting because through facial expressions, you're able to tell what people are actually feeling. Their emotions, their universal emotions. Now, why is this interesting? Because it's used for deceit detection. It's used for profiling. We use it a lot also for things like interviewing at really, really, really high levels, security levels, It's important. TSA in the US, they have this as well. Maybe not at the same level as other security agencies, but it is important to understand that it is a tool that is more scientific than anything else. Okay, so it really does work. The principle is that there are just six universal emotions. Now, what do we mean by universal? Every single human being, no matter where they come from, no matter what their religion, their background, their ethnicity is, sexual preference, etc., male or female, whatever they might be, will have these same six universal emotions. So I'm going to go through them real quick. So we have sadness, rage, contempt, disgust, joy, and finally, fear. So today we're only going to talk about fear. Important thing about fear is that fear is the only one of these six emotions that lives in the future. Now, are there only six emotions? No, there are only six universal emotions, six base emotions. However, you can derive over 400 different emotions from those six. What does it depend on? Its focus in time. Our mind's focus in time. See, fear will only ever live in the future. Yeah. What happens there is it varies in intensity in accordance to different things like expectation, the level of importance, the proximity of time that you're focusing on. It could be like 5 seconds from now. It could be like an hour from now. I beg your pardon. So it's important to understand this. Now, when you fear something, your reaction is quite physiological. Yeah. What do I mean by this? We mean that fear has its own physiology and it has its own physiological effects, like, for example, the response of the adrenal glands producing adrenaline, cortisol, and so on. One of the first things that happens is that as adrenaline kicks in, you simply start passing all the blood through to the extremities so you can run, so you can jump, so you can fight. It's a fight or flight response, right? Okay, so you start shutting down certain basic systems, like, for example, your reproductive system, your digestive system. You shut those down because at that moment, they are not a priority. They're not necessary. Now, this we have evolved into having. Now, why is fear a bad thing today? Well, because we really don't need it as much as we needed it before. Yeah? Let me explain. We don't need fear as much as we needed it before, because before we had to run away from predators. We had to make sure we chose the right types of places to stay. You see, a nap in the wrong place would basically mean that you will not wake up. You'd be somebody's lunch, or you'd be at the bottom of a cliff, or you would be taken by a river, or you'd be taken by the sea. We don't know. But the key thing is that in those times, thinking negatively worked. That's one thing. The other thing is that not only thinking negatively would have worked, but also fear would have worked. Yeah? Because we need to escape whatever is threatening us, and we need to run towards things that we need to actually take care of, like, a child that's crying. When we hear water running, if we're thirsty, we go there. But today we don't need that. Today it's no longer necessary. And why is it not necessary? Because we're no longer in that type of danger. See, we do live a relatively sheltered life, depending on the part of the world you're in. But chances are, if you are watching this today, whenever you might be watching this, you are living a sheltered life compared to what we were living, like, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 years ago. So do we really need it? Today, not so much. But again, fear is something that occurs for our own survival. Is this important? Yeah, it's very important. It's very important because without that, we would never have evolved to what we are today. However, where there is fear, there is always something that you're focusing on in the future. The question is, what is it? So let's talk about this for a second. In his book, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill stated that there were 6 fears, 6 basic fears. The fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of old age, and the fear of death. So I want you to think, just for a little while, which one of those fears dominates in your life. Now, these are basic fears. These are fears that are quite real for most of humanity. There are some intellectually based fears that can still fall within that category, but they're a little harder to deal with. And that we would pretty much need to have a one-on-one conversation, even if it's a very, very short one. So those fears are the fear of the unknown, the fear of not being good enough, which sort of relates to the fear of criticism. It's not exactly the same. It's not exactly the same. It's also like it more relates to disappointment of self and disappointment that other people might have of you. But the reality is that we do fear the unknown at times. We do have the fear of change, and that's an important one. And that is an amazing one, because with too much fear of change, there's no leadership. Yeah? And leadership is extremely important. For yourself, self-leadership is important. And, to lead your own family, your organization, whatever you're going to be leading, you need to be free of that fear of change. Remember one thing, change is automatic, progress is not. And this is an important thing. Now, we all deal with fear. We do. We really seriously do. And it's an important thing to deal with, but a lot of the times we just don't have to have those fears, but we just need to eradicate them. Now, there's many ways of doing this. You could try things like, for example, hypnosis. And I'm happy to hypnotize someone to get rid of a fear here and there. It's not an issue. We can do that. I'd rather not, though. I'd rather go in for a more permanent change. But I also understand that permanent change takes time. So there are some really quick ways to interrupt fear right here, right now. No problem whatsoever. Okay? Let me talk to you about that. So every emotion, for it to be able to exist and persist, requires 3 focuses. Number 1, physiological focus. Like I said, fear has its own physiology. And it's important to understand that. Fear has its own physiology. Number two, fear has its own mental focus. Now, this is very important because where your focus, where your attention goes, energy flows, right? And the other one is it's got its own language, its own linguistic focus. I'll talk to you basic stuff about this, but let me just tell you a little bit about the linguistic focus for starters. So the linguistic focus, if we can picture this, there's this gentleman. He's an Austrian soldier in World War I, and he's running through the trenches, and he jumps down on the from trench to trench. He's jumping around, running, and he just stops all of a sudden, sits down in the middle of the field. Seriously, he just sits down, boom, takes his notebook out, takes his pen out, and he starts writing. Now, what could compel him to do that? I mean, there's bullets flying left, right, and center. There's people going all over the place. I mean, what compels somebody to just sit down in the middle of a battlefield while he's trying to get to another trench to write something? Well, this Austrian soldier's name is American Austrian, actually. His name was Ludwig Wittgenstein. He was a great philosopher. And what he wrote, and I'm just going to condense this because he wrote quite a bit in that moment, but whatever he wrote is that human experience is limited by our linguistic capabilities. So if you turn that around, it's like, okay, why? Our language actually limits our emotions. Our language limits our capacity of expression, therefore our capacity of retention. There's a great album by Pink Floyd called The Division Bell. And in that The Division Bell, there's a song that begins by saying this: millions of years ago, men lived like animals until something happened which unleashed the power of imagination. We learned to talk. This tells us everything. Imagination gets unleashed because we have the capacity of speaking. Speaking and linguistic capabilities give us the ability to pass information through from generation to generation. Storytelling. Here's the thing. Just watch kids play. Yeah? Watch kids play. And it's amazing. You'd think that it's cute and, it's all nice. But man, their world is crazy. Their world is absolutely amazing, but it's full of danger and it lacks subtleties completely. Check it out. So the kid is jumping from one couch to another to the table because if he falls, he will or she will burn in lava. What? Right? Cops and robbers running around everywhere, shooting at each other across the park. Yeah? Little kids playing with make-believe babies. Oh, you're going to be okay. Don't worry. You got another arm. The other one might have been cut off, but you got another arm. And then the great one that I have here in Alicante that I see a lot of kids play at the beach. And it's very, it is absolutely crazy, Chris. It's insane, but they learn. They learn by doing this. So at the beach, what do they play? It's really amazing. You see a kid playing at the beach and they play shark. Now, they are swimming away from the shark. The shark just happens to be the parent or another child, right? But they're swimming away from the shark like crazy. We, as adults, we don't play that because we know that if a shark is chasing us, that's a really bad thing. We know that if lava hits us, that's a really bad thing. It is funny, but they play like that. And why do they do that? They rehearse in their mind. It's a mental rehearsal. And it's amazing because it's like they have this virtual reality world inside their little heads. They have this virtual reality world, and imagination just explodes, and it's awesome. And that virtual reality simulation prepares them for situations in the future, which is really, really cool. Yeah. we do that. We still do that. We do it in dreams. We don't remember most of our dreams, but research says that about 80 to 90% of our dreams are actually horrifying simulations of, disastrous events. I mean, I don't know how many of you have ever dreamt of something like a shark attack or a lion attack or the apocalypse, or a financial ruin or of homelessness. Seriously, this just happens, and it's crazy because it really happens a lot. We just dream of really bad things, and our dreams are filled with fears. But it's okay because it's a virtual reality simulation that prepares us, for any eventuality. I'm just happy that I don't remember 90% of my dreams. But this is true, and it has its function. Now, let's talk about that linguistic situation again. You see, through storytelling and through expressing our emotions and through writing as well, we're able to pass information on from generation to generation, and we're able to create a civilization. Beg your pardon. So we're able to create a civilization. This is what we are. We're a collection of information through, decades and decades and decades and centuries and centuries and centuries of stories and histories and opinions. This is what we are. Now, how do we interrupt an emotion through our language? Well, let me put it this way. Thoughts, that's thoughts here, become words. With your words, become your actions. Your actions become your habits. Your habits become your destiny and your character. Okay? So, how do we interrupt the emotion of fear through language? Well, we need to start thinking realistically, but in solvable terms. I'm not going to tell you that it has to be positive thinking. No, you need to be realistic, but you need to be talking and thinking in solvable terms. Yeah? If you've lived a life that's been free of any sort of obstacles or pain or sorrow, then you still haven't lived. We all go through these things, and we all learn from these things. And it's real. And it gives meaning to the other moments where we feel great and we feel fantastic. Because if we felt great and fantastic all the time, we'd be used to it. And then what? We do require that contrast in life. And it's a beautiful contrast. Yeah? But we want to make the balance go towards, happiness and joy. So linguistically speaking, we need to start speaking in solvable terms. Speak of solutions, not of problems. This is very important. Very, very important. Okay? Speak in terms of solutions, never speak in terms of problems. That is another difference between someone who has been critical and who criticizes. Yeah, a person who criticizes always looks at the bad things in people. A person who's critical basically looks at the realistic aspects of whatever they're being critical about. Yeah, it's more looking at it a little bit more objectively, trying to be a little more constructive. Okay. Now, secondly, we have the mental focus. Again, like I said, thoughts become your words. And your words become your reality. Words become things. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about how your mind can actually produce things like fear. Well, it's basically through experience. What you have experienced in your life will determine whether you run away from pain, which basically means you're based on fear, around fear, or run towards pleasure. Now, this pain-pleasure principle is very interesting, and it is all about mental focus. how do you catch yourself thinking in a negative way? Or how do you catch yourself thinking in a constructive way? The reality is that we have, according to university studies, we have between 60,000 and 90,000 thoughts per day. Well, think about that. That's a lot of thoughts. That, of course, includes daydreams and dreams, okay? But that is just a tremendous amount of thoughts. Now, out of those 60 to 90,000 thoughts per day, we actually, 93% of those thoughts are repeated thoughts from the previous day, which means 93% of the thoughts we're going to have today are the same as we're going to have tomorrow. You see how your thoughts will eventually determine who you are and what you do? So you need to be careful with them. How do we make sure that those thoughts remain more constructive? Well, again, research shows that about 80% of our thoughts, 80% of those 60 to 90,000 thoughts are in fact negative, because it worked in the past, because we have to be alert all the time, but we don't need to now. Now our alertness is different. Now we can look towards enlightenment. Now we can look towards pleasure and glory and, success. However you might feel that, whatever you might feel success is for you, you can look towards that. And that is really important. Really important. Now, the one way that you can do it is ask yourself the right questions. Now, how do you ask yourself the right question? Well, first of all, always ask yourself in terms of solutions. Never feel sorry for yourself. Never shift the blame to somebody else. Why me is not a question that should always be avoided. Yeah. How can I use this is a much better question, for example. I'll talk about this part in another Facebook Live. For now, we're going to focus on physiology. Why physiology? Okay. Physiology is so important for emotions. And why? Because it creates this explosion, biochemical explosion in our brains, in our hormonal system, in our bodies. We start feeling things. Yeah. So with fear, we get all these things like cortisol and adrenaline. And the deal is, if that keeps on building up, it leads to adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue syndrome, autoimmune disorders, excessive oxidation. And Chris, I know you know that. Excessive oxidation of the body and of our systems. So you get a tremendous amount of oxidative stress. That's something that's very important to be looking at as well, because then you get older, faster, more disease. So it's much better if we simply eradicate fear from our lives. But here's the other one. Oh, a physical way to interrupt an emotion is a very direct, fast way to eliminate it. But the important thing to know is that when we eliminate an emotion using our physiology, it requires proactivity. You need to work on it. It's not an automatic thing. Yeah, you do the exercise that I'm going to give you in the download that I'm going to give you for free today. You do those exercises and you'll be okay. But it also means that every single time, and I do mean every single time, that you feel that fear, whatever that fear may be, you need to act and do one of the exercises that I'm going to give you for free. But it's not permanent. It's not permanent. It'll be reducing itself little by little. The effect is immediate. Yes, it is. In 60 seconds, you can eliminate the fear and you can move forward. True. But it is not permanent. You need to kick into action every single time you feel that fear. Do your exercises, interrupt the pattern. Boom. That's it. If you want to go deeper into it, then we're going to need to go into linguistic interrupts and into mental interrupts. And for that, we can discuss that later, but those are very, very specific for the types of fears and for the people, right? It depends on your situation. It depends on you. But the physiological ones, some of them are pretty universal depending on the emotion. Yeah. So for fear, I've got a few that are amazing. And again, I'll give you those for free in a bit. So we're going to look at the fears again. So we have fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, and fear of old age, and fear of death. Now, again, research shows that the fear of death and the fear of criticism are amongst the highest ones out there, and followed closely by the fear of poverty. I don't know about you, but things like criticism and death, kind of unavoidable, right? If you don't want to be criticized, there's a solution. There's a formula for that. And I'm going to give it to you right now. So if you don't want to be criticized ever, this is what you need to do. Do nothing, say nothing, believe nothing, have no opinion. None of those things. Because the moment you have an opinion, the moment you say something, the moment you do something, if you achieve something, somebody's going to be out there criticizing you. The reality is, if there's nobody out there criticizing you, then you're probably doing nothing at all. So don't be afraid of criticism. I'm not going to tell you that just by telling you this, you're going to stop being afraid of it. No, do your exercises. What I'm saying is, don't be afraid of it because it's useless. Criticism is actually a good thing because it's a symptom of you actually having some level of activity in your life. And I bet you want to have some sort of level of activity in your life. You don't want your life to be completely and absolutely meaningless, do you? I mean, do you? Okay. So, fear of death. Again, unavoidable, inevitable. It's going to happen. And one thing that every single human being in this planet who's alive right now has in common is that they will cease to exist. Eventually, they will die. This is important to know. This is an interesting thing about fear, especially the fear of death. The more you confront it, the smaller it gets. So there's many times in my life I've been enveloped in fear. I can't even tell you the first time I was scared, but I can tell you I've been scared many times in my life, and I still feel fear, but I'm able to interrupt it pretty quick. Now, I remember one time a dog started chasing me. I was very young when a dog started chasing me. I was on my bicycle. I remember it was a BMX. It was, I think it was called Benotto, Italian bicycle, and it was gold color. Yeah, I mean, it was the 80s, right? And I was riding my BMX, my golden BMX with this big fat yellow wheels, and this dog starts chasing me. I didn't know what to do. I just pedaled and pedaled and pedaled, and the closer the dog got, the harder I pedaled until I got too tired. And basically, that's the first time I realized if you get scared, your digestive system doesn't quite work the same way. So, yeah. Do I need to say more about that? No. Anyways, that was fear of death. I felt that the dog could have killed me. Could he have? Well, maybe. Did he? No. That was the first time I realized that. And, when I think about it now, I understand what a dangerous situation it was for me at the time, and how happy I am that I am in Europe, and how happy I am that some of the kids here don't actually have that issue because there are no dogs on the street. Not really. You always have to have them on the leash. But at the end of the day, fear came in useful that day because I was able to pedal faster than I ever had. So that's fear of death for me. Fear of poverty. So here's another interesting story. So back when I lived in California, had a little business, and it was okay. It was a coaching practice, part of it. Another one is I was trying to sell some stuff on radio because I discovered that a lot at 2 o'clock in the morning there's just this sound on the radio, and I realized that there's a lot of people who can't sleep. So I decided to sell something for insomniacs, and it went pretty well. But I made bad decisions. I got on a bad business partner. He cheated me out of money, whatever. Doesn't matter. Key thing is, when everything was going down, I felt a lot of fear of being poor. A lot of fear. And what happened? I lost it all. But I'm still here, right? So am I afraid of that now? Sometimes you feel that, oh my God, it's not as great as I wanted to be. And you might feel a little bit driven, might feel a little fear. But at the end of the day, when I come to look at it properly, I create my physical interrupts, I get my mental interrupts, I get my linguistic interrupts, and I just basically plan for the next success, knowing that I need to risk in order to gain. But, I don't have to be stupid about it. But I need to make sure that I am, in fact, focused. It is difficult. I understand, especially when outside sources are involved, for example, banks, the tax agencies, for example. It can get scary, and I understand this. But how does it help you to be scared? Fear of criticism. Well, to be honest, it's not a fear that has lived in my life very often. Mostly because when I'm happy and I'm going down the street, just doing my own thing, I don't really care what other people think about me. All I know is that if I'm being criticized, I'm doing something that is being noticed. At least it's being noticed by somebody, Fear of ill health. It's happened. It's happened when I had my accident, and I was hospitalized for a little while, and I was unable to read and write, and I was unable to walk. The doctor said there was no chance I'd read and write again. And then they said that I would never walk unaided in the same way again. But hey, since then, I've climbed Mont Blanc, Kilimanjaro. I've proper rock climbed as well. Surfed, skied almost every year on skiing. Skated, did the St. James Way, or Camino de Santiago, as we call it here in Spain, 4 times. And it's been magnificent. But then again, I changed my physiology. I changed my mental focus. I changed my linguistic approach to my situation. Fear of loss of love. We need to understand that we will love and we will lose. My grandmother just died a few days back. I'm sorry. And of course, we've all suffered losses, and I loved her, and I still do very much. But she went in the most beautiful way. Did I lose her love? If I focus on that, then sure, I did. But if I focus on the love that she gave me, and if I focus on what I believe, my true beliefs, and the belief I have in my greater power, then no, I haven't lost that love at all. So, fear of old age, sometimes, and I mean sometimes, old age is a really good thing because of maturity and wisdom, but sometimes age comes alone. meaning sometimes people age without maturity and without wisdom. They just simply get older and act the same way and think the same way and behave in the same way. Now, that one I've been more scared of than just simple old age. I think my biggest fear would be the fear of not changing, the fear of sameness, the fear of monotony. That's mine. Now, let me tell you a little something about the biggest fear that most people have, which is the fear of death. Death is unavoidable. Simple as that. But when I was a kid, my parents and I decided the martial arts were the way to go. So I did study Kung Fu. I studied ninjutsu. I studied swordsmanship. And in studying Japanese swordsmanship, I understood certain parts of the philosophy. Now, it wasn't until recently that I read those philosophies again. More specifically, I read a philosopher, swordsman, Samurai Ronin. His name was Miyamoto Musashi. Miyamoto Musashi was a Ronin who lived in the early parts of the 15th century, the first half of the 15th century. He died age 60 in a cave, writing as a philosopher and a scholar. So he never, ever lost a single battle. Never. He was a master strategist. When he was 13, he beat a samurai and killed him with a stick. Now, never defeated, but the key thing about him is that he was just a great strategist. One of the things that he said was that, generally speaking, the way of the warrior is the resolute acceptance of death. Now, let me go back to my accident and tell you how it relates to this. Once I had my accident and the doctors told me what they told me, I realized I was not going to stand for that they could choose a reality that they believed in for me, but I was going to choose my own. I realized very quickly that I needed to become not a survivor, but a warrior. I needed to become a warrior of life. And how do you do this? How do you become a warrior of life? I started realizing what Miyamoto Musashi once said. And what did I do? I realized that every little thing that had happened inside my body after that accident was a battle I had to fight. And a lot of these battles were inside me. They were duels inside myself. So I realized that the path of the warrior and the way of life are one and the same. And if we understand and accept that it will come to an end, it brings tremendous peace because of that acceptance. You see, fear is the only thing that I've known that gets smaller the closer you get to it. And I think that's amazing. Now, I suggest that you think about all these things deeply. I really do believe that if something is stopping you in your life and you're not at the place you want to be in your life today, it's because you have a battle with fear. Which one? Well, that's entirely something you need to look at yourself. I'm going to repeat them, the fears. Fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, and fear of death. Now, here's a little exercise before you download what I have prepared for you. The exercise is very simple. Write these down. Yeah, write these down. Fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, and fear of death. And now, list them in order of priority. Once you've done that, I want you to look at the top 2 fears that you have today. And ask yourself the question, why am I scared of this? Once you do that, reflect on it. Then let it go. Reflect on it for a little while, then let it go. At night, do the same thing. And then again in the morning, and then again at night. Do this for 1 week. For 1 week, reflect on your 2 deepest fears. Asking yourself the question, why am I scared of this? Every time you do that, do the exercises I'm giving you now. You will see how little by little you're going to start controlling those fears. And it is awesome. You do need to control them. And you have that power. And you have that ability. And now you're going to have those tools. Before today, hey, you could live with those fears, and that's it. But now, after today, you've got that download. You've got those tools. Now there's no excuse. Now there's no excuse. Now there's no, oh, I'm scared of that. Not even telling yourself that you're scared of those things is an excuse anymore. Because now you have the power to take action. Now you have the tools. So now you have a bit of an explanation. You can watch this video again. I'm only going to leave it up for about a week, but you can watch this video again and again and again until you get completely sick of it. You can do that. Learn about your fears. Reflect upon them. Really important. Reflect upon your fears. Please reflect upon your fears. List them. Put them in order of biggest fear to lowest fear. And work on the top 2. Just that. The next 2 weeks, just work on the next week, or even 2, yeah. Why not? 2 weeks. Work on those 2. Work on those 2 fears. Reflect at night, reflect in the morning. Every time you're going to get deeper and deeper into it, but you're going to be interrupting those fears with the exercise I'm going to show you. That's it. It is as simple as that. No more excuses. No more fear. Do you like that? If I would have actually had this opportunity right now, I'm telling you, if I had this opportunity when I was like 15, 16, I would have taken it and my life would have changed from that moment. But I didn't have the opportunity, but you do today. And I love the fact that you have this opportunity today and that I can give it to you. And like this, I'll be able to give you some other things, some next week and some the week after next. And I'm going to keep on doing this for you. Why? Because I have this urge to help, to contribute, and I love doing it. And I love human emotions, and I love to hear how people change because of little things that, I've been able to trigger inside them. So if you really, truly want to be in a different place than you are today, then simply download your free gift, and that's all you need to do. If you want to take it a step further, there's a link right up there in in the description of the event. There's a link, and you can book a 15-minute free session with me. Just 15 minutes. That's all I can give you. And book a 15 minutes free session with me, and we can explore the fears, and I'll give you a couple of tools for your specific fears. No problem. Yeah, love to do that. But I need to know that if I'm going to do this for you, that you are going to take responsibility, you're going to take action, and you're actually going to use the tools that I'm going to give you. Okay? That's all we need. You need to use the tools I'm going to give you. You need to pass on the information, pass on this video. It's only going to be there for like a week, and that's it. That's it. After that, I'm bringing it down and putting it in my content. And if you want to have access to it, you're going to need to pay for it. But for now, for this week, it is totally there for you. Now, and the bottom, whether you're listening to this and watching this live or you're watching it later, I just want you to put where you are from on the comments. If you do me that great favor, that'd be fantastic. I just want to know where we're talking, or who we're talking to in what parts of the world, because this is a big, beautiful world. And, it's, I just like to know where these words are reaching and if they're going to be giving some sort of a positive impact, and I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so before we go, I want us to repeat the fears and the emotions, and I want to go through just one more time, how the emotions actually travel through, have a place in time, okay? Depending on our focus and our mind. So in the present, this is important, we can only feel joy. In the present, there's no problems. So part of our exercises, the physiological exercises that I'm going to give you to interrupt your fears, are going to bring you down to the present. They're going to bring you down and connect you to the here and to the now. This is really important because it's the only time you can actually have joy. Yeah? Now, that's one. So let's start from the left of time and move to the right of time. And let me just say this before I start. You can look to the left of time to learn your lessons, and you can look to the right of time to be able to plan. But let your heart be present and still. This is where you need to be. In the here and in the now is the only place to be. Okay. Now, the left of time. All the way in the back of time, we have sadness. The further back your mental focus goes, the more it tends to sadness. Great example. Think about a great moment in your life. Think about that really far back, really, really, really far back. A fantastic moment in time. Right now, in the present, it's giving you joy. But now understand that you don't have that anymore. That moment is no longer with you. If you feel a little bit of sadness, if you feel a little bit of longing for that moment, then it's in the past and it's sad because you don't have it, but it's nice to remember it. So there's joy in it. And that focus, that's jumping from past to present, from past to present, from present to past, and past to present, creates something we call melancholy. The other thing is, when it travels from past to present or present to past, but you associate it with music, smell, with any of the senses, or with a person or with an object, this is called nostalgia. But again, it is that movement, past to present, past to present. So you go to the past, far back, it'll be sadness. And a little bit closer, you'll have rage, and all the levels of rage. It could be annoyance, and you can have anger or rage, or whatever synonym you want to put into that. Chances are it's going to be the same thing, but it's going to vary in intensity. Then, before that, you have a little more to the present, but still in the past, you'll have contempt. A little bit before a little bit in the past of the now, you'll have disgust. Disgust is almost occurs instantly in the present, but you need to be disgusted about something. And that stimulus that occurs needs to happen now, and then you react to it. It takes a little bit. So that's still a little bit in the past. In the present, you have joy, the only one in the present. And in the future, you have fear. Now, too much fear, as we said, has a physiological reaction, physiological chain reaction, and that is basically, the production of cortisol and stress hormones, et cetera, the subsequent adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue syndrome, autoimmune disorders, oxidative stress. All these things are quite bad. Beg your pardon. But when you have too much of that, you can also become stressed. See, when you have fear that is not a high level of fear, but it's sort of like a moderate level of fear that you manage it every single day. If you manage it every day and then you build on that and you manage that a little bit and you build on that, eventually you are going to become very stressed out. You can have a burnout, you can stress out a lot, you can have adrenal fatigue from it. But the key thing is, if you allow yourself to do that without interrupting the patterns, there's a whole new world of other emotions and focuses in time that can cause a whole lot of things, like, for example, severe depression. Okay? So we need to be careful with fear. We need to be careful because it can produce stress, it can produce anxiety, and it's very reactive. It makes us react instead of act. It takes us away from proactivity, which means it takes our power away, our power to decide. And do you really want to endanger that? Because when the power of decision is taken away from you, so is your freedom. Simple as that. When the power of decision is taken away from you, freedom is stripped away from you too. And here's the deal. If it's fear, it's your choice. And you are stripping yourself from that freedom. Now, do you want to be free? First thing you need to do, eradicate fear. That's it. How do we do it? First of all, physical interrupts. That's it. Physical interrupts. And right now I'm going to type in here. I am going to type in the download. Give me 1 second. And here it is. This is all you need to do. You need to go to this, which is www.coachjansen.com/en, because we're in an English Facebook Live, /FFF1. And there you are. There you got it. So go to that and that's all you need to do. Follow the instructions and you will have your free download where you can actually just completely interrupt any one of those fears, and also the fear of change, and also the fear of the unknown, and also the fear of not being good enough. Okay? I'm looking forward to reading more of your comments. I'm looking forward to seeing them even in a private message. Please reach out if you have any questions. Please book an appointment if you have a fear that you really want to get rid of. I can get rid of most of your fears within 15 minutes. So if you choose that session and choose your fear correctly, chances are you might not need another one. But there is a process for these things. And I am happy to engage in you for you to be completely free of fear. So get ready to live free from fear. Get ready to do it now. Commit to a life of happiness. Commit to a life of achievement. Commit to a life of success. And commit to yourself. That's all we need to do. That's all I ask you to do. That's all I want you to do. Be happy. Eradicate fear from your life. It is so worth it. And it is awesome. I'm not going to say that fear is not going to come back once in a while. It will, but you're going to have the tools to eradicate it. Okay? So www.coachjansen.com/en/FFF1. That's all you need to do. Go into that. Boom. Got your free download. Got your free tool. Use it. Use it. Use it. Use it. Use it. Share it. That's what I need you to do. Use it and share it. And yes, please do give me credit for the work I do. Really do appreciate that once in a while, right? So thanks a lot for taking this time, for investing this hour in yourselves. And feel free to contact me. Feel free to book your 15-minute session, but make sure that you choose your fear correctly. You've got 15 minutes to change your life. Can we make it happen? That's entirely up to you. Okay? So, you've got the downloads. Again, www.coachjansen.com/en/FFF1. Okay? That's it. And my Calendly is right up there as well. What can I say? I love to be alive. I love this life. I love my life. And let's live free from fear. Okay? Talk to you soon, and I'll see you in the next Facebook Live.